But first tonight, to concerns Australian taxpayer funds are being exploited to support terrorism against Israel. Anthony Albanese and Penny Wong have now committed a total of $46 million of your money to the Palestinians since the terror attacks began against Israel on October 7. Australia gave its first round of funding to Gaza on October 14, just a week after the October 7 unprovoked massacre. 1 week. And Penny Wong today told Palestinian Authority officials that the latest $21.5 million in funding must be managed carefully to make sure it wasn't misused by terrorists. And she said it's for civilian healthcare and childhood education.
This is an issue I raised with the Palestinian Authority, expressed my continued expectation about those funds being used appropriately. I expressed to them that it was extremely important, given the focus on this, that any funds Australia provides are used appropriately for the provision of the services that we are seeking to fund. And we wanted to make sure that there was appropriate transparency around that. And work with them to ensure that that is the case.
It's so ludicrous, it's almost funny. Can you imagine the Hamas officials? Oh, we've been building all of these tunnels, but because some official we've never heard of from Australia asked politely that the money not be used for terrorism, oh, well, we'll stop now. But then Shadow Home Affairs Minister James Paterson pointed out correctly that the people Penny Wong met with, the Palestinian Authority, have no governing role in Gaza and haven't for some 17 years. They can't possibly have any role in ensuring that the money Australia sends isn't exploited for terror.
The Foreign Minister has effectively conceded this overnight. She said in her press conference that she raised this issue with the President of the Palestinian Authority. The problem with that is that the Palestinian Authority has no authority in Gaza. It hasn't for almost 20 years after Ariel Sharon withdrew the IDF from Gaza in 2005 and Hamas used the opportunity to push the Palestinian Authority out. So I have no idea how the Palestinian Authority is able to assure that Australian taxpayers' money will not be misspent. And if that is Penny Wong's only plan to ensure Australian taxpayers' dollars doesn't end up inadvertently funding terrorism, then I think it's totally inadequate and she needs to revisit it.
Now, we've reported time and time again that there are concerns that international aid is being exploited and misused to support terrorism, including financing Gaza's network of 500 kilometres of underground tunnels and also weapons. Billions of dollars have gone to Palestinians in Gaza over the years. Billions. Even without any of the many investigations that have taken place showing aid money has been exploited for terror, it's obvious just from looking at what's before our very eyes in Gaza. Gaza could have been an international city with its own airport, given the amount of funds that has gone there, if there was a government that chose democracy. But instead of building schools and hospitals and other infrastructure, there's a seemingly never-ending supply of weapons to fire against Israel. There's a sophisticated underground tunnel network, and all the while, the Palestinians are impoverished and they live in third world conditions. It's why during this war, Hamas has had enough fuel to power rockets, but the hospitals can't operate their medical equipment. The media doesn't report any of this, of course. They simply show the poor conditions in the hospitals, and they blame Israel, they blame Jews for killing Palestinian babies, when the reality is far different. It's Hamas, the governing body in Gaza, taking with open arms the millions of dollars that countries like Australia blindly hand over. It's why it's actually irresponsible to continue giving funds to Gaza without proper protections for how it's being spent. Otherwise, your hard-earned money is likely to be contributing to terrorism, going to buy weapons to be used by killers. I revealed back in November that Australians have been donating tens of thousands of dollars to an aid organisation in Gaza that's been accused of funneling the money to a hardline Islamic terror group. But now there have been more revelations about UNRWA, the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees. Well, the Geneva-based human rights group, United Nations Watch, has exposed that there's a Telegram group of around 3,000 UNRWA teachers in Gaza, and there's praise among them for the Hamas massacre on October 7. This is the organisation that has received part of the Australian taxpayer funding that Penny Wong has announced for Gaza, $6 million in the latest round. Now, the admin of this Telegram group is Safa Mohammed al-Najjar, and he's shared information about UNRWA to the group, including employee lists. On the 7th of October on social media, there was this praise for Hamas as holy warriors. Then another admin in the UNRWA group is a teacher called Abdallah Mehez, who called on Gaza citizens not to leave, not to evacuate the north of Gaza when Israel was begging civilians to get to safety in the south. As you know, Hamas's use of human shields is part of its military strategy, a strategy to win support in the West by increasing its death toll to win sympathy. Another UNRWA teacher celebrated the Hamas massacre of Israelis, saying on social media, "What we did exceeded expectations." And then this UNRWA teacher, Yasser, standing in front of his classroom blackboard, has said on social media, "How much I hate the Jews." Well, as the executive director of UN Watch, Hillel Nua, says, your tax money pays UNRWA teachers to incite Palestinian kids to murder Jews. And I could go on and on. There are many examples, but you get the picture. Now, the United Nations has said that it's now investigating these allegations.
On that report of UN Watch on UNRWA, I just asked to Human Rights Watch what they thought, an assessment of what they thought on that report, and they say they don't think is worth anything because they don't have proofs or things like that. Anyway, they didn't have anything good to say about the report. Yesterday, you said, I think if I heard well, you said that you are concerned. I mean, the UN is concerned.
I said what I said. I mean, neither of us can remember what I said yesterday, clearly, Stefano. But what I'm saying is that any allegations are looked into.
Will be looked into. Well, it seems like a half-hearted commitment to investigate. We'll follow up on that. But James Paterson, Shadow Home Affairs Minister, said the concerns about UNRWA are well known.
There are very well-documented concerns with UNRWA, including alleged siphoning of its funds by Hamas.
Well, I asked Penny Wong's office today if they will review sending taxpayer funds to UNRWA. A DFAT spokesman said in response that the United Nations Relief and Works Agency is the only organisation with a mandate to provide basic services to the Palestinian people, including food, shelter and emergency healthcare. As the Foreign Minister has said, we will continue to hold UNRWA accountable for its adherence to principles of tolerance, non-discrimination, equality and neutrality. Continue to hold them accountable. I don't think we've been holding them accountable at all, judging by their actions on and in the wake of October 7. But anyway, it does seem that Australian taxpayer funds, along with other international aid money, will continue to flow to an organisation where some of their employees very clearly support Hamas. But where else is all this aid money from the international community actually going? Well, apart from weapons and terrorist infrastructure, it's also lining the pockets of Hamas leadership. The New York Post reported that Hamas's top 3 leaders alone are worth $11 billion US, and they're reportedly living a life of luxury in Qatar and Turkey. The New York Post reports that Hamas runs an office in Qatar's capital, Doha, and its leaders, Ismail Haniyeh, Musa Abu Mazak and Khaled Mashal, maintain a luxurious lifestyle. They've been seen at its diplomatic club, photographed on private jets and travelled widely. It really is the case that governments in the West, like Australia, like to ignore this inconvenient fact that Hamas leadership are living a life of luxury. And you have to ask, where are they getting the money from when Gaza is in such a dilapidated state? Well, an Israeli satirical show, Eretz Nehederet, did a skit on this. It's very funny, also quite depressing. Have a look.
My dog needs new Armani. Gaza sky is black, but Qatar is always sunny. Knocking on the door. It's the Mossad. Chill ya, baba. I just ordered sushi avocado.
You can look up the rest of it. And these Israeli skits have gone global because they accurately capture what's unfolding. The Australian newspaper's columnist Alan Howe writes that Gaza could have been like Singapore. He says, but the people of Gaza voted to be run by Hamas, a terrorist organisation not known for its economic ambitions. Instead of building upwards and outwards like Singapore, Hamas decided to build down. Colloquially known as the Metro, Gaza's hundreds of kilometres of deep tunnels are wide, illuminated, and house stockpiles of weapons, including rockets, an army of its soldiers, food and water stores, sick bays, and air-conditioned command centres. He says today they also hold dozens of kidnapped Israelis who we now know are being starved, tortured, and sexually assaulted. There needs to be more accountability about how funds, our funds, sent to Gaza are being spent. It's not good enough to blow $46 million of taxpayer funds and just hope that it ends up in the right hands.